The noon sun burned white over the town of Dry Fork, the kind of light that stripped color from everything it touched. Dust rolled through the main street like smoke from a dying fire. Eli Ward tied off his horse outside the general store and stepped down slow, boots sinking into the red grit. His face was the kind carved by years and wind, one long scar running from ear to jaw like a reminder he didn't talk about. He came for flour, salt, maybe a length of rope. Nothing more. But fate never checks your list before it ruins your day. As he crossed toward the saloon porch, something caught in the corner of his eye. A sheet of paper nailed to the wall, edges curled and trembling in the wind. A wanted poster. The ink had bled from rain, but the face was still clear enough to stop his breath. Nora Haines. Her eyes looked back at him from that paper, steady, familiar, and impossible. The same woman he'd buried 3 years ago. Beneath a mesquite tree after the wagon ambush out by Black Cinder Ridge. Beneath her name. Wanted for murder, $500 dead or alive. Eli's pulse kicked hard. The world tilted. For a moment, the street noise, horses, laughter, the piano inside, fell away until he could hear only the rasp of the paper flapping against the nail. He reached up and tore it down. The sheriff, leaning in the doorway with a toothpick, watched him do it. "Know her?" the man asked, voice dry as sand. Eli folded the poster once, twice, stuffed it in his coat. "Thought I did," he said. The bat-wing doors creaked open behind him. A boot step, heavy. A man in a long coat entered, trail dust on his hat brim, pistol low on his hip. He slapped a handful of the same posters on the bar. "Fresh off the press," the stranger said. "Word is she's headed north. There's gold in her capture if you've got the stomach for ghosts." Eli didn't answer. He just looked at that stack of faces, at her face, and felt the ground shift under him again. He'd buried Nora Haines once. Now she'd risen, not in flesh, but in ink and accusation. And somewhere out there, beneath the same burning sky, she was breathing. The rain had already begun when Eli Ward found the smoke. It rose faint and crooked through the cottonwoods, thin as a dying breath, curling above the gulch where Redwater Creek ran brown with storm runoff. His horse trembled beneath him, hooves sinking in the soft mud. Somewhere in that tangle of timber and rock, someone had lit a fire, someone who didn't want to be found. He dismounted slowly, rifle in hand, boots crunching over wet pine needles. The air smelled of rain and smoke and something else, blood maybe, or memory. Each step down the slope brought the past a little closer. Then he saw it, the remains of an old trapper's shack, half collapsed under the weight of moss and time. A curl of gray smoke bled from a cracked chimney. He called out once, low and steady. "Anyone in there?" The answer came fast, the metallic click of a hammer being drawn back. A shadow moved inside, and then a figure stepped into the doorway, framed by the flickering fire behind her. She held a pistol aimed right at his heart. Her face was leaner, harder, the years carving new edges into old beauty. But he knew her eyes. He'd seen them wide and still 3 years ago, glassed over under a sheet of canyon dust. "Nora," he whispered, barely believing. She didn't lower the gun. "You've got a ghost's nerve coming here." He took a careful step forward, palms open. "They told me you were gone. Then why do you look so damn surprised to see me breathing?" Her voice cracked like brittle wood, rough from years of hiding, of running. The rain thickened, drumming against the cabin roof. She swayed on her feet, pale beneath the dirt and smoke. He saw then that her sleeve was torn, blood soaking through the fabric of her shoulder. He moved closer despite the pistol. "Let me help you," he said quietly. "That wound needs tending." "Don't you touch me," she spat, but her knees buckled before the words finished. He caught her before she hit the floor. The pistol clattered against the boards. For a second she fought him weakly, then went still, breathing hard, trembling. Inside, he laid her down near the fire. The cabin was small and stank of damp hides and old tobacco. Every creak of the roof felt like it might be the last. He tore a strip from his coat, pressed it to her wound, and watched the blood soak through. When she opened her eyes again, the anger had dimmed, but the mistrust stayed. "You shouldn't have come," she said. "They'll kill you too." He leaned back on his heels, watching the fire throw her shadow long across the wall. "You're gonna have to tell me who they is." She gave a dry laugh that sounded more like pain. "If I tell you what really happened, you'll wish I stayed buried." Outside, thunder cracked so loud the walls shook. The fire wavered, then steadied again, just like their breathing. The two of them sat there in silence, the storm closing in, the years between them collapsing into the crackle of the flames. And for the first time since the day he thought he buried her, Eli Ward felt the truth pressing down heavier than the roof over their heads. Some ghosts don't come back to haunt. They come back to demand an answer. Rain battered the roof like 1,000 ghostly hands trying to claw their way inside. The wind whistled through the cracks of the cabin, bringing with it the smell of mud, pine, and old blood. Eli Ward sat near the fire, watching the flames twist and flicker against the damp logs. His rifle rested across his knees, though for once his eyes weren't on the door. They were on her. Nora Haines sat across from him, pale firelight brushing the edges of her face. She had changed since the last time he saw her, leaner, hardened, her dark hair streaked with dust and rain. Her hands, though rough, still trembled when she poured coffee into a tin cup. The silence between them wasn't the kind that begged to be filled. It was the kind that held weight, years of guilt and graves. When she finally spoke, her voice came like a cut through the storm. "Do you remember that ambush near Bitter Creek?" she asked quietly. Eli nodded. "Hard to forget. They said it was bandits robbing a wagon line." She gave a bitter laugh. "That's what they told everyone. But the truth is, it wasn't a robbery. It was a purge." Eli frowned, the firelight glinting off the scar down his jaw. "A purge?" Nora's eyes met his, and in that instant, the storm outside felt small. "They came for us, my brother, me, a handful of settlers. We weren't stealing. We were carrying deeds. Proof the land was ours. They didn't want proof. They wanted silence." Her voice cracked, but she pressed on. "Your lawman, Cole Mercer and his gang, rode in with torches. They burned the wagons, shot my brother as he begged for mercy, called it justice, left me in that fire to die." Eli looked down, jaw tightening until the veins stood out on his neck. "I was part of those rides," he said slowly. "Didn't know what we were doing. They said we were chasing thieves." Nora let out a hollow laugh, half anger, half disbelief. "They always do. The law out here's just a badge with a price tag." He didn't argue. He couldn't. The weight of his past pressed down like the storm itself. The memory of burning wagons, of screams echoing across the desert, clawed its way back into his mind. He'd buried it deep, but now the truth came crawling out through her words. After a long silence, Nora reached into her pack and drew out a weathered bundle wrapped in oilskin. She set it on the table between them. Inside were papers, maps, deeds, and signatures. "This," she said, tapping them with one finger, "is why they want me dead. These names, every one of them someone they framed, someone they buried. If the truth comes out, Mercer loses everything." Eli stared at the papers, then back at her. "You're saying the whole damn law in this territory's built on a lie?" Her eyes burned steady in the firelight. "That's exactly what I'm saying." The fire popped, sending sparks into the air. For a long while, neither spoke. The storm began to fade, replaced by a softer rhythm of rain dripping from the eaves. Eli rubbed a hand across his face, the grime of years mixing with sweat. "I tried to do right," he murmured. "All this time I thought you were dead. I thought that's what justice was, burying ghosts and moving on." She looked at him, something unreadable in her expression. "And what do you think now?" He hesitated, eyes lingering on the fire. "Now? I think maybe I've been working for the wrong kind of law." A single tear slipped down her cheek, though her voice stayed firm. "They hung my brother for stealing cattle," she whispered. "But it wasn't cattle. It was land. They killed him because he stood in the way." Eli leaned forward, elbows on his knees. The fire cast their faces in gold and shadow, two broken souls staring at the wreckage of their own choices. Outside, the thunder rolled far away now, like the world was exhaling. Eli reached out slowly, took the packet of papers, and tucked it inside his coat. "Then we'll finish this," he said quietly. "Together." For the first time since he found her, Nora's shoulders softened. The rain eased into a whisper, the air inside the cabin warm with a fragile, newfound truth. He looked at her through the dim orange glow and saw not an outlaw, not a ghost, but the last honest witness to a world gone rotten. And in that moment, Eli Ward understood. Sometimes justice wasn't born in courtrooms or from men with badges. Sometimes it crawled out of the ashes, wearing the face of someone the world had already buried. Morning came slow and pale over Redwater Creek, the kind of morning that didn't warm anything. Mist hung low across the valley, soft and silver, rolling like ghost smoke from the night before. The cabin's roof dripped steady from the storm. Inside, the fire had burned down to embers, and the air smelled of wet ash and gun oil. Eli Ward stepped out to fetch water from the barrel, his boots sinking in mud that still held the memory of thunder. His breath came out white in the chill. For a moment, the world felt still, too still. Then, faint and rhythmic, he heard it. Hoofbeats. At first, he thought his mind was playing tricks, the echo of old nightmares. But it grew louder, rolling through the fog like a drumbeat from the past. He froze, head tilting toward the sound. 3 dark shapes emerged on the ridge above the creek, silhouettes against a bruised sky. They weren't travelers. They rode too slow for that, too careful. He stepped back into the cabin, voice low. "Riders!" 3 of them. Nora stiffened where she sat, her hand instinctively reaching for the pistol she kept under her coat. Her eyes narrowed, scanning the haze through a crack in the shutters. The way one of the men rode, loose in the saddle, shoulders crooked, she knew him. She didn't have to see his face. "That one," she whispered, "was there the night they burned my brother's ranch." The words landed heavy between them. Eli glanced at her, then out the window again. The riders dismounted near the creek, their horses snorting steam into the fog. One man raised his rifle and fired once into the air, a single shot, not meant to hit anything, a signal. Somewhere farther out, another shot answered. Nora's breath shook, but her hands didn't. "They found me." Eli opened the rifle's chamber and slid a cartridge in with a soft metallic click. He looked at her, jaw tight. "You got any place left to run?" She gave a bitter half-smile. "If I did, I'd already be there." He nodded slowly, thumb brushing the hammer. Outside, the riders mounted again, circling wide through the fog, patient as wolves. Nora's voice broke the silence. "You don't owe me this fight." Eli's gaze drifted to the crumpled wanted poster stuffed in his coat pocket, her face staring back at him through torn paper and rain stains. "Maybe I do." The line lingered, heavy as the mist itself. Some debts weren't written in money. They were carved in memory and paid in lead. Rain had been falling since dusk, a slow, relentless kind of rain that soaked through the wood, the soil, the bones. It hissed against the cabin roof, whispering the countdown to the fight they both knew was coming. The creek outside was swelling, turning red with clay and runoff. Every few seconds, lightning would flash and show the same thing, 2 figures moving inside, wordless and grim, turning that frail wooden shack into something that might, just might, hold. Eli Ward stripped the door from its hinges and set it sideways across the front window, hammering nails through with the heel of his revolver. Each strike echoed through the cabin like a drumbeat of resolve. Across the room, Nora Haines packed black powder into cartridges, her fingers quick despite the tremor in them. The lantern flickered between them, one yellow flame fighting the darkness. When the wind broke through a crack in the wall, Eli sealed it with his coat and stepped back, breath fogging. He spoke without turning. "They'll come before sunrise. Maybe sooner." Nora didn't look up. "Then we're already late." The air between them felt heavier than the storm. For years, she'd been a ghost he couldn't bury, a face that haunted him every time thunder rolled. Now she was alive, standing 10 feet away, loading bullets like her life depended on it. Because it did. She rose to her feet, slid open an old chest, and pulled out a worn leather holster. For a long moment she just stared at it. "Haven't worn this since the fire," she murmured, voice thin as smoke. Eli looked at her, eyes shadowed. "You might need it before this is done." There was no warmth in his tone, no softness, just fact. That was the way of things out here. Sentiment was a luxury the frontier didn't afford. She strapped the holster to her thigh, every motion deliberate. The revolver, her brother's old Colt, fit into it like it had been waiting all this time. When she looked up, the lantern caught the faint scar running from her jaw to her collarbone. Eli didn't flinch. He'd seen worse. But something about that scar, the reminder of what had been done to her, made his hands tighten on the hammer. They worked in silence. The kind of silence that says what words can't. Between them, the air smelled of wet wood, oil, and fear. Outside, rainwater dripped from the eaves, pooling into the muddy ruts leading to the porch. Eli crouched near the threshold, burying a thin wire trap just below the surface. "That'll take a horse's leg clean out," he muttered. "If they don't watch where they step," Nora knelt beside him. They never do. The sound of hammering filled the cabin again. Boards over windows, nails through floorboards, cartridges clicking into place. Every movement was survival shaped by muscle memory. They didn't talk about mercy or justice or what would come after. Only the next minute, the next step, the next nail. Then, between strikes, something strange happened. A flicker of memory, fragile, uninvited, slipped into the room. It came when Eli reached for a loose plank near the stove. The wood still smelled faintly of pine tar, the same scent that used to cling to the porch railing of their ranch years ago. And just like that, for a heartbeat, he saw them as they were. Barefoot in the twilight, dancing slow to the tune of crickets and wind. Her laughter back then had sounded like a promise. The memory hit like a gut punch. He blinked it away, jaw tightening. But when he looked up, Nora was already watching him. Her eyes softened, just barely, and for the first time since he'd found her alive. A faint smile cracked the wall of steel around her face. "Guess the world went wrong quick after that," she said. "Yeah," he answered quietly, setting the plank in place. "And it ain't stopped yet." Lightning flashed outside, a white curtain tearing across the valley. For a brief second, everything was bright. The half-built barricades, the faces carved with exhaustion, the tools scattered like bones across the floor. Then darkness swallowed it all again. The storm deepened, the creek roared louder, and the cabin groaned against the wind. Inside, the two of them stood amid the shadows, tired, bruised, and unbroken. Eli wiped sweat from his brow and stared at the door, the one they'd reinforced with planks and rope. It wouldn't hold long when the time came. But maybe it didn't need to. Maybe they didn't either. The lantern's flame danced lower, smaller. Like it too knew what waited on the other side of night. And in that flicker, in that pause between thunderclaps, there was something almost sacred about the silence. Two people who'd already died once, now standing side by side, ready to die again. The rain beat harder, like the world itself was counting down the seconds. Eli holstered his revolver. Nora cocked her brother's Colt. No words left. No fear left. Only the storm, and the promise of dawn that might never come. Night fell like a curtain of black iron. The rain hadn't stopped since sundown. It drummed against the roof of the cabin, soaking the boards, whispering through the cracks. Every sound outside carried weight. The creak of leather, the wet shift of hooves, the faint echo of men laughing under their breath. The bounty riders had arrived. Eli Ward sat in the half-dark. One knee braced on the floorboards, his rifle steady across the window frame. The only light came from the fire's dying glow, flickering orange against the edge of Nora Haines' face. She sat near the back door, revolver resting on her thigh, eyes fixed on the shadows outside. Neither spoke for a long while. The rain filled the silence for them. Then came the sound. Boots dismounting. 3 sets. Crunch of wet soil. A low whistle cutting through the storm. Eli's jaw tightened. "They're spreading out!" Nora nodded, voice calm but low. "They'll try to smoke us out." He looked at her. Hair damp, hands trembling just slightly. She caught his glance and her expression hardened. "Don't look at me like I'm fragile," she said. "I stopped being that years ago." Eli almost smiled. "Good," he muttered. 'Cause Fragile won't make it through tonight. A pause. Then, glass shattered. The first bullet tore through the window frame, splintering wood inches from Eli's shoulder. Another smashed through the wall, embedding itself in the table leg. He dropped low, returned fire. The muzzle flash lit up his face like lightning. A grunt came from outside. One of the riders hit. From the other side of the cabin, Nora rose to her knees, firing 2 clean shots through the back window. Her movements were sharp, disciplined, mechanical. The smell of gunpowder filled the room. Thick and choking, she ducked, reloaded, and said under her breath, "They'll come for the door next." Eli grabbed the lantern off the shelf, smashed it on the floor, and kicked the burning oil toward the doorway. Fire rolled across the planks like a living thing, hissing as rainwater seeped through the cracks. For a moment, the blaze painted the room in gold and shadow, and in that light, she looked like a ghost pulled out of memory. Outside, a man's voice bellowed through the storm. "Nora Haines!" It was deep, hoarse, familiar. She froze. Eli recognized the name before she spoke it. "Cole Mercer," she whispered. "He led the ambush." Eli steadied his rifle. "Then tonight, he finishes it." Mercer's silhouette emerged from the rain, broad-shouldered, slick with mud and authority. A tarnished badge clung to his chest, half hidden under a coat soaked through. Lightning caught his face, the smirk of a man who thought the world was already his. He stepped closer, shouting through the thunder, "You stole something that wasn't yours, Nora." She rose from behind the overturned table, eyes burning. "Justice?" she shouted back. "You're welcome to it." Her words cut through the rain like a knife. Then chaos answered. Gunfire ripped across the clearing. Bullets tore through the doorframe. Eli fired again and again, cycling the lever with practiced rhythm. Nora shifted her aim between windows, taking down shadows that flanked them. Each shot echoed like thunder. The rain mixed with smoke, filling the cabin with a gray, choking fog. Sparks from the dying fire flew into the air. The smell of wet gunpowder burned the lungs. Eli's shoulder jerked back. A glancing shot tore through his coat. He grunted, steadied himself, and kept firing. From the corner, Nora's revolver clicked empty. She crouched, loading fresh rounds with shaking fingers. Outside, Mercer's voice came again, closer this time. "You think this storm will hide you, Nora? The whole damn territory wants you gone." "Ain't no one left to stand beside you?" Eli shouted back, voice low but sure. "She's not standing alone." Mercer stepped into the doorway, lightning flashing behind him, a shadow framed in smoke and flame. He raised his revolver. Eli didn't hesitate. He dove forward, tackling him into the hearth. The 2 men crashed into the embers, sparks bursting into the air. Mercer snarled, punching, kicking, trying to bring his weapon around. Eli caught his wrist, teeth clenched, forcing the barrel toward the ceiling. The sound of the rain faded beneath their struggle. All that existed was breath, fire, and fury. Mercer slammed Eli's head against the floorboard. "You should have stayed out of this," he hissed. Eli spat blood. "Maybe I should have." He twisted, slamming Mercer's arm against the hearthstone. The gun went off, deafening in the small space, shattering a beam overhead. Nora stepped forward, revolver in both hands. Her voice cracked but steady. "Cole." Mercer looked up, sneering through blood. "You ain't got the stomach." Her hand trembled, for just a heartbeat. Then it stilled. The revolver barked once. The shot was clean. Mercer's body slumped against the fire, his badge sliding into the ashes. The rain outside swallowed the echo, carrying it off into the canyon. For a long time, no one spoke. Only the sound of rain dripping through bullet holes and the hiss of the dying fire remained. Eli rose slowly, pressing a hand to his side where blood seeped through his shirt. Nora lowered her weapon, staring at Mercer's lifeless face. She looked hollow, like the last piece of her past had finally burned away. Eli spoke softly, voice rough. "You all right?" She didn't answer, just nodded once, eyes distant. He stepped to the doorway, watching the rain wash over the bodies outside. The mud carried away the footprints, the spent shells, even the blood. What would you have done? The narrator's voice lingers in the silence. If the law hunted the one you loved, and the truth bled out under the same badge that claimed to protect it, would you pull the trigger too? Lightning flashed again, followed by a deep, rolling thunder. Eli turned back toward her. "It's over," he said. Nora's voice came quiet but firm. "No, it's just beginning." Outside, dawn waited somewhere beyond the clouds, unseen but certain. The fire hissed out, smoke curling toward the ceiling like a prayer, and when the rain finally eased, the only sound left in Redwater Creek was the slow, tired breath of two souls who'd survived the night they weren't supposed to. The storm broke sometime before dawn. Now Redwater Creek lay quiet beneath a curtain of silver rain, the kind that washed the dust off everything, even the dead. The cabin stood half-ruined, smoke curling from its chimney like the breath of a dying beast. The air smelled of wet ash, gunpowder, and the faint sweetness of pine. Inside, the last embers flickered orange against splintered walls, whispering of the night that nearly consumed them both. Eli Ward moved slow, his shoulders heavy. He stepped through the doorway into the gray light, boots sinking in the soaked mud. Nora Haines followed close behind, her revolver still in hand though the fight was long gone. Around them, the land looked baptized, dark, wet, reborn. Together, they dragged the fallen bounty men into the clearing. No words passed between them. Each body thudded into the earth with a dull, final sound. Eli took his spade and began to dig. Nora joined him, her breath sharp in the chill. Rain rolled down her face, mixing with the dirt and blood that hadn't yet washed away. When the graves were done, they stood in silence. Two survivors who'd lost everything except the right to keep going. Eli reached into his coat and pulled out a tattered wanted poster, its edges curling from water and fire. He struck a match. The flame bit through the paper, eating her name letter by letter until only ashes fluttered into the puddles at his boots. "They can't hang what's already been redeemed," Eli said quietly. Watching the smoke twist up into the dawn, Nora's face softened, though her eyes stayed hard. She knew peace like this didn't last on the frontier. The law had a long memory and a longer reach. She opened her satchel and pulled out the bundle of papers, the proof that could expose everything. Land theft, false hangings, corruption in every badge from here to Dry Fork. She pressed it into Eli's hand. "Tell them the law's just another word for fear," she said. "Maybe you'll make it mean something else." He nodded, though he didn't look at her, just at the horizon bleeding orange through the fog. The rain softened. The creek that had run red all night now shimmered clear and calm, whispering down the stones like a hymn. Nora mounted her horse, the leather saddle squeaking wet. She didn't look back, not once. Eli watched her disappear between the trees, her silhouette fading into mist. For the first time in years, he didn't feel the weight of guilt or rage. Only the quiet hum of rain and the echo of her voice. The storm had taken her name. But maybe, just maybe, it left him a reason to remember it.